hopefully this will work out just as well and maybe even get more people. So what we're going to do is have Sarah, our wonderful secretary, she's got a couple of slides with the agenda. So we'll have this up. She'll share the screen, and just wanted to point out, if you can hover over it, if you hit the pin, it'll make it a little bigger, being we do have a lot of people now. If you hit the pin on there, then the screen can get a little bigger for everybody. If you're unfamiliar, I'm still learning Google Meet, so just wanted to point that out. So first, we will have Sarah share the screen here for the agenda, call to order, and then we need to approve the last May's meeting minutes. Seems like forever ago. So we'll just take a minute there for people to read and then for people to approve those.
They're pretty small, I'm sorry. I can zoom in, but then I'll have to scroll down.
Might be better. Yeah, once you zoom in and then we can scroll.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I apologize. I started updating this wrong one, so that's there. Does anybody need to see anything else?
And need a couple of approvals.
Looks good. Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mike.
Can I second even though I'm sharing?
Yeah.
Second.
All right. And did we want, I guess, how do we want to do attendance for this?
Yeah, so if everybody could, if your name, I will go through the names, but if you're just have a phone number, I'm not going to know. And if your name is something different in your than what's displayed, if you could just type your name in the chat, then I will take attendance if that works.
All right. And then today we have a wonderful guest, Jamie. I'm not going to try and chop your last name, but Jamie took us here to give us a little help on and just some extra support and some tips on the best way kind of to deal with this craziness that we're all in and with working in school. So I will hand it over to Jamie. And Jamie, if you just want to share your screen, I think you have a slideshow, is that right?
I do, yep.
Wonderful.
I think I'm still muted. Oh, you have me turned on.
Yep, it works.
Okay. And so do I have 10 minutes or 30?
You do what you need. This is why we're here.
Okay. It looks like
we're just very fortunate to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, because I want to be respectful of your time, and I just noticed on the agenda it only said 10 minutes, so I want to make sure I'm accurate. So I planned about 30, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
That works. Yeah, we should still be. Yeah, that's just fine. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about 4 strategies. I could talk probably 8 of them this evening or more, but to really get to the ones that I think maybe you haven't heard before, because there's lots of blogs and tips all over online about things you have heard before. And so I want to share things that maybe you haven't. The 4 parts tonight are going to be kind of covered in individual. So I'm just going to leave this here and move on, because you'll see each of these covered in the next 30 minutes. So we have this thing we refer to at Behavior Best as a light switch. And the idea is that children's brains are still developing, and they're not fully developed until our children are 18 to 24 years old. And so because of that, they don't yet have all the skills they need to manage the stressors that come at them. And so we refer to this sort of protective mechanism as the light switch. And what this means is the frontal lobe reaches its limits of its skills. And so your child doesn't have the skill to accept no for an answer, or pause something really fun and move on to schoolwork, for example. And so whatever that stressor is, if they don't have the tool to manage that stressor, the frontal lobe will shut down to protect our children. I want to say that again, to protect our children. Because if they didn't have this protective mechanism, all these things that stress them out throughout the day because you told them no, or somebody gave them an instruction to do something they don't want to do, or because now they have to sit in, class instead of running around outside, whatever the stressor may be to their, small brains, kindergarten through 6th grade brains, we need to realize that that reaches the limit, and then our brain protectively shuts down. So we call that the light switch, and we say the switch is off. And all that means is that in that moment, teaching in the way that we usually think about teaching, by talking and reasoning and explaining and, making sure they learn the lesson about the behavior, right? All those things are not going to be effective. And not because the teaching is wrong or you're not using the right tool, but most often it's because the timing of when we're teaching is working against us, that child's brain is actively blocking our efforts. Well-meaning as we may be as the parent or teacher or caregiver, if we try to teach the lesson when the child's switch is off, we're likely not going to get through. I can't compete against that brain trying to protect your child. So in this moment is not the time to teach the lesson. So think about this. Your child's teacher, amazing as they are at Blue Heron Elementary, I hear all the time that they would never walk up to a child who is upset about something. They're sad, or they're really angry, or they're frustrated, or whatever heightened emotion is happening. That switches off. You would never see a teacher at Blue Heron Elementary walk up to a child and say, all right, let's learn about fractions today, friends. That just does not make sense. And it's even comical when we think about that. Like, of course, we would never do that for academic skills or cognitive concepts, but we do it all the time for behavior. And so if you are trying to teach your child anything when their switch is off, you're likely going to continue to be unsuccessful. So the big lesson I want you to hear tonight to start is that we have to teach when the switch is on. And it's so important. When the switch is on for our children, but also for us. And so if you're concerned that you're running late to a meeting, or maybe it's a day they're going in person and you're running late getting out the door and you're in a rush, these are moments when we as parents, our switch goes off. I'm right here with you. I have 2 boys. I have a kindergartner and a 5th grader. And we're full distance. And so I know that if my switch is off, I am not going to be a good teacher to them that day, or facilitator. I don't claim to be a teacher by any means, right? None of us do. But anytime my switch is off, I am doing my children a big disservice. And so we as the adult have a switch too. The trick is that we have a developed frontal lobe. Most of us are older than 18 to 24. And so we have problem solving skills. We have reasoning skills. We have coping strategies. We have time management strategies, organizational skills, and all these higher level brain tools that our children do not have. And so if either party switches off, it is not a good scenario for teaching. and learning. And so what we need to do is make sure both parties' switches are on. Helping you get your switch on is a whole nother class, right? To help parents with that. We help teachers with that. But the idea that your switch has to be on so that you can teach. And then when your child switches on, their brain can actually receive the learning. They can absorb it. It's not being blocked to protect them. So we're going to use the switch on and off metaphor, but to kind of get to the other really important tools I want to share with you, I want you to see that on our website, you can get the whole video about this for free. And I highly recommend you share it with anybody and everybody. It is really eye-opening to understand that we have a teaching moment or not, and that can help us stay a little bit more objective as opposed to putting all our emotion into it, which is really, really, really easy to do as parents. And so the second tool I want to give you this evening is capturing your child's natural motivation. That I'm a behavior analyst. That's what I do for a living. And oftentimes we think of behavior and management and we think about sticker charts and tokens and treats and all these things that are sort of artificial, that are very inconvenient. You know, they're not around when we need them. And therefore, we're very inconsistent in using them, most of us. And so as a behavior expert trying to help parents and teachers, I want to make sure you use what's on your person at all times. And that is your child's requests. One of them, one of those motivations. I'm going to talk about a second one next. But this first one is when your child is asking you for something and you're going to say yes anyway. I would argue their switch is on. This is the perfect moment. So if you're going to say yes anyway, why not capture a teaching moment some of the time? Some of the time, you're going to say, sure, we can go outside. First, do a silly dance. Or maybe you'll say, first, I want you to run around the island 3 times. These are common ones at my house. So they're like, really? That's silly, Mom. That's all I have to do? And of course, they go do it. So we're accomplishing a lot of things there. We're delaying their request. And let me tell you what, American children, we all need to learn a little bit of self-control and experience delays and not all the impulsivity and immediacy that our world is sort of, you know, breeding them in, if you will. And so learning to wait for things is something I'm going to come back to towards the end of the evening. And so this starts teaching that you're teaching them to delay things and tolerate that. And they're doing something fun in the meantime, so their switch is staying on. It's like muscle memory for the brain. The more their switch stays on when they're learning, the faster they'll learn, the more they'll learn. And your teachers will confirm all of that. So half the time, you're just going to make it super fun and silly. And this is like the investment in the technique. I'll say to my 5th grader, sure, but before we do that, like we're going to be playing a game this evening. Before we do that, are you going to tell me about a battle in Fortnite, or are you going to tell me about something you did today in Minecraft? Like that's what's fun and simple for him at a 5th grade level. Running around the island or doing a silly dance is like my kindergartner, right? And so you can customize all of these recommendations based on your child's interests and ages. And that's what I love about these tools, because they're individualized. That even if you have more than one child, they are not 2 of the same. Even those of you who maybe have twins, they are not the same. And we have to kind of meet them each individually. And so if we have strategies that are easily individualizable, if that's a word, we're going to use them more often, because we're going to get good at it by using them more often. And then we're going to keep wanting to use them. It's like this awesome cycle of success. So half of the time then, when your child asks for something and you're going to say yes anyway, now is your teaching moment. The first one I said is like your investment in this strategy. Like that's going to keep them wanting, you know, to do more and expect that, hey, I do this easy thing and I get what I asked for. Awesome. That's an awesome little quick pattern history to build. So when you're first starting this with your children, I want you to use the silly fun ones more than like, sure, after you do your math. Those ones, they might be getting some kickback right now. So before we go to those big ones, I want you to start with small ones that are simple and fun. And I want you to proportionately do more, like maybe 70-30 or 90-10, depending on your child's tolerance of instructions and choices and stressors and things like that. So the other part of the time, when you're going to say yes anyway, you might say things like this. Sure. Are you going to do all the assignments or just 2 before you take a break? So maybe they asked me, like, can I watch a show? Can I go outside and swing? Whatever they're asking me for, if I'm going to say yes anyway, it's like, sure. Are you going to do all your assignments or just 2 of them before we take a break? Now, for my 5th grader, that's appropriate. But for your 5th grader, or even your 6th grader or kindergartner or whatever it may be, this may not be an appropriate choice. So these are examples. And you'll have to identify what's going to work best for your child. The key is that we make sure they're going to be successful. They can't fail. They're going to do it and be successful doing it. And if that's the case, and you need to start really small to make that happen, I encourage you to do so. And I'm going to talk about this starting really small and sort of baby steps here on the next part of this presentation. So some more examples. Instead of a choice, maybe you give a clear instruction, but don't ask a question. I see parents and teachers even doing this all the time, well-meaning. Can you just finish up, 3 more rows on that math sheet and then we'll take a break? And they're like, nope. Well, you just asked a yes, no question. And so don't be upset with them when they give you a no answer to something non-preferred, right? So make it an instruction, make it a statement. Sure, yeah, you can do that after your social studies Google Meet this afternoon. This totally happened just today. It happened when I wrote this weeks ago as well. But today, my son had social studies this afternoon, 1 to 1:45, and he's asking for Fortnite. And the only place he can play Fortnite is on one of my phones. And so it is very, very reserved because I need them, I work. And so it is like the most focused kid you will get then during that social studies, because he knows the expectations during social studies, and that he doesn't just sit there and, zone out, but he knows exactly what my expectations are. And then he gets his little bit of Fortnite time. If your child is asking to be done with something, they're motivated. So don't just think about the requests when they're asking to get something or do something. Think about the ones when they're asking to be done with something. They don't want to do that anymore. And the idea is things like this. Sure, we can take a break. Your choice is 1 or 2 more math problems. Are you going to read to the end of the line, end of the sentence, or are you going to read to the end of the paragraph? Are you going to complete number 2 and 3 or just 2? So start small, whatever your child needs. And if your child is not able to make a choice in some of these examples that I'm using, you'll notice at the end here that that is one of the crucial pivotal skills that I highly recommend you teach your child as a behavior expert, because it sort of gives you the ability to put awesome, nice little boundaries on your child's behavior, but empowers them to have an amazing sense of control too. And, I like using the example that when I first started serving families, I would go into a family's home and I would take tally on my clipboard. How many times did they give their child an instruction? And I would set a timer for 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, the range of instructions given to this child was 30 to 60. Can you even imagine, as the parent, put yourself in that child's shoes and think about it. If somebody were firing 30 to 60 instructions at you in 10 minutes, how many of them would you follow? Right? And so it feels a little bit more like you're being told what to do all day or controlled. And a lot of us would not like that either, even with a developed frontal lobe. And so we know that control, or the tendency to use their behavior to delay or avoid or control or get out of something they don't want to do, is a really powerful way kids are motivated. So let's not let them use their unwanted behavior to accomplish that goal, like acting out in class. So then they get to go see Mr. Hartman, escape, right out of that task they didn't want to do anyway, right? The solution is not to make them stay either, because guess what? Now we're disrupting the rest of the children's learning, and that's not going to fly either. So we have to have baby steps in between there. And so choices not only give a child who's seeking control, i.e. escape out of the classroom or refusal or shut down or ignoring you, like they just won't answer. If you have a child, that does that, these are the situations that we need to work on. They're avoiding or delaying or controlling. So the way that we sort of remedy that, the antidote, if you will, is choices. And parents tell me all the time, oh yeah, I give my kids choices all the time. However, I rarely meet a parent who does it in this sort of strategic way that we want to teach parents to do so. And so if you have a child that's like refusing to sit in that, Google Meet distance learning session, or they're refusing to do the actual paper and pencil tasks that come with the distance learning, or they're, refusing to read or whatever it is, we have to sort of look at it in a different way and find ways to give them the break before they have to use their unwanted behavior to take the break. So an example might be, like I gave here, sure, I can tell you're ready to be done. Or even before they ask to be done. If you've got a kid that like shuts down quickly, let's get ahead of that. I was just talking with a parent whose child is struggling in kindergarten, and here's what I suggested, that he's not going to sit for circle time the whole time. He's showing you that with his behavior. And the more we try to sort of make him do it or set him up for success to do it, the less likely he is to do it. So instead, what we need to do is meet him where he's at. Like, what's the shortest he can sit there right now? Or I'm sorry, the longest. And the parent is like, oh, maybe 2 minutes. Okay, well, if the most they can do right now is 2 minutes, then by all means, let's practice giving them a break when their switch is still on. And I'm going to talk about how to maybe use choices to do that. And then while they're on their break and keeping their switch on, we're going to use choices to bring them back. And then the next day, maybe they can tolerate, double that amount of time. And the next day, maybe double that. And eventually, before you know it, they're sitting there the whole circle time as a kindergartner. And so if they're going to escape and run away and sit in the corner anyway, why don't we instead allow that, but contingent on their participation and follow through and cooperation and tolerating of that circle time that they're escaping. And so at home, if it's a, live session that they, can't do, it may not be that you can like give them breaks. You don't want them to miss the lesson either. But what you can do is target this skill outside of school time. And this is where our expertise comes in so handy, how I want to share with you how to teach these things when it's not time to sit in social studies Google Meet. We want to teach it when their switch is on, when they're motivated, when they're asking for things, right? So if choice making is the skill you want to teach, this is perfect. We're going to give them choices when they're asking for something. If sitting longer in that class is what you want to teach, perfect. We're going to do that. They're asking to be done, great. We're going to give them a choice of how much more we think they can handle. Or I want you to give breaks when they're still switch on, to keep the switch on and to strengthen the behavior of participation, as opposed to strengthening the behavior of, poking at my friends or, yelling or hitting at a parent or kicking or throwing things off the desk or whatever they may do when they're protesting that expectation. So the second form of attention that I want, or motivation that I want to teach you that's very natural, is your attention. It's free. It's on your person at all times. You can turn it on and off as quick as a light switch. And so this is the key, that usually we find ourselves helping families, where we get in this pattern of the child has learned that these unwanted behaviors get us to come running. And then we help them navigate that problem solving, whether it's fighting with a sibling or, frustrated with a assignment that they're not sure what to do, whatever the stressor is, we help them. We get their switch back on, we solve that problem. But then before we know it, 20 minutes later, we come running again because there's a problem. And our children learn very quickly that that's a very effective way to get you to come running. And I'm not telling you to ignore either, because that's not going to help. As an expert, I know that children will just up the ante. Ignoring is not the solution, even when the child is using that behavior to get attention. And so we still need to stop the behavior or interrupt the behavior or address it. We can't just ignore it, or we've got safety issues and we've got property misuse and things like that. So that light switch video is going to teach you how to do that differently. But for tonight, the key is to remember that if you can catch them and give them a dose of your attention, because it's literally like preventative medicine to your children. Like all the toys and things and games and whatever, as much as they may make you think that that is so powerful and meaningful and motivating to them, your attention is the end all be all. And so if you can use it wisely, you get to decide, are you going to put deposits into their, negative bank account, or are you going, a behavior, or are you going to put deposits into their positive behavior account? And so I want you to take more time to pause what you're doing at a time that's convenient to you. I'm a work from home mom too. And so I have to pause at a time that's convenient to me and swoop into what they're doing, give them a dose of my attention. And then I can separate again and move on with my things that I need to do. Some kids you're going to need to start with very frequent doses. Like you might have to sit right with them, those kindergartners, and help them the entire session because they don't have the skills. But then as they're learning, you can step away and have little doses where you come back. And before you know it, now they have all the skills they've learned. Eventually, you're providing fewer doses each time your child shows they're more and more successful. And then we vary the type of attention. You know, we have this little pass-through window where the former owners put like an addition on. So there used to be an outdoor window there, but now it's like just a pass-through where I can pass them their snacks while they're on their Google Meets and things. And so I often will just come by and do one of these, and nod and wave and thumbs up to them, because that little dose of attention is sufficient sometimes. And by the way, your teachers will thank you if they don't always require the interactive types that I show here on the slide. So sometimes you want to do this silent type of attention. I have a note here that I used this just in the last week and a half to teach my 5th grader to sit still and refrain from like fidgeting with all the fun stuff around the desk. There's like the paper bag under the desk that's for the recycling for paper. And he's like, I hear him like kicking at it and trying to put his feet on it. And then there's like a little tiny, gray garbage can with one of those flip lids, where it just keeps flipping around and around. And so he's like, I can hear him like flipping that with his foot while he's sitting there. And I'm like, well, clearly I should not have put those under the desk because, for my design and my organization, it works fabulously, but clearly not for them. And so I was like, okay, now he's really fidgeting, even though I moved those things. And it's like he's got something in his hand. And then I see him like he's not necessarily paying attention. Some children do need the thing in their hand to fidget with to keep their attention. That's okay. But my child, not so much. And so thereafter, I had a conversation with him at lunch, like, hey, I noticed that we need to work on, keeping our body still while we're learning, because I know that for you, it's important to keep your body still. For others, they may need to kind of move or fidget a little. So then I said, what do you think I should do to let you know when you're doing a great job? Should I wink at you? Should I give you a thumbs up? Right, here's where all those choices comes in, so that you're doing a good job and we can get, this learned behavior for you. We can learn this. And so then quickly, like within a couple of days, I just swoop by that little window and I give him a wink or I do a thumbs up, and he's now sitting there very calmly. I don't see him like picking at his face and doing all these things that I don't want him doing on his live video conferencing. And then the interactive part is really strategic. It's not just good job playing or good job doing your math, praise. We think of interactive dose of attention, we think of like praise. And while that may be okay, I want you to focus on the effort, the independence, the responsibility they're showing, the creativity. I say things like, I can tell your brain is really working hard today. Or I'll ask them to teach me the content of what they're learning. It's a really great way to stay engaged with them, but also to give a little dose of attention. So they're working on, social studies, or I guess, this was social studies with my son a few weeks ago. And I'll say things like, hey, teach me about, what were they learning about? The Mayans, for example. And he gave me this big old spiel about the Mayans. I'm like, wow, thanks. I forgot that since I was a young kid. That was really helpful to jog my memory. And then I leave. Like, it's like a 2-minute interaction, gives them that little like, oh, mom's paying attention to me, right? But also I didn't say, good job doing your schoolwork, because at 5th grade, they don't want to hear that anymore. They want the dose of attention. My kindergartner, he needs more of the like effort, doing the accurate work, those kinds of praise. But then you can also have them read something to you, offer them choices like, do you need some help? Or are you doing okay? You can give them examples like, ask them a question about what they're, learning in the school. So an example was, when did the Native Americans settle in Forest Lake? And I learned all about that last week. And it was like, I grew up in Wisconsin. I know nothing, admittedly, about Minnesota history. So it's really fun that this is the year that I'm doing distance learning, because I get to learn about it too. And then that natural interest in their learning is going to naturally continue to strengthen their, interest in learning, but also their on-task ability. And then once they get really good at staying on task, we use the dose of attention from a distance to keep them on task. And you'll see me if you ever come into my home on a conference call or on a client call or something, and I'll have my earbuds in and I'll come walking through the room doing one of these, but I'll keep talking to my client or whoever it is on the phone, and they'll know, because I'll be like, you know, that they know I'm on the phone, so they won't be, you know, interrupting or talking, but they got that little dose of attention. Now, friends, I don't expect everyone to do this. It's taken me years to master that multitasking ability, but the message I want you to hear is that it is very stressful as a working parent, and I assume that a majority of parents that are facilitating the distance learning are doing some sort of multitasking throughout the day, whether it's paid work or housework or chores or volunteer work, whatever it may be. And so we're multitasking, and there's nothing more stressful than when we're sort of pulled away at a terribly inopportune time to go put out a fire, so to speak, with our child's behavior. And so what I want you to do is think strategically. What is it that gets me to come running? Because that's the thing I want you to do, sort of gauge the need for in your dose of attention. So with my kindergartner, he might still get distracted and see something in the room, and before I know it, he's up over there playing with a toy. So I'm going to make sure that he's staying focused and on task by my doses of attention. So we're going to use them strategically. The next part is to build a bridge with baby steps, right? So oftentimes what happens is our child's skill level is like right about here. Hopefully you can see this on the video. And then our expectation for them is up here. It's like, we know they're capable. We know they know how to do this, but they're still performing here. And if you keep expecting here, guess what's going to happen? A whole lot of behavior that you don't like between the 2 points. That expectation is not a teaching strategy. We just can't keep expecting that because they should know at this age, or because they, you know they can do it. You've seen them do it before, but even though they're not doing it now, that you can keep expecting really all day long, right? But if we don't find a way to teach that expectation, you're going to keep expecting and getting very frustrated when they're not meeting your expectations, capable as they may be. Their job is to learn. And so it's our job to find not only the way that they learn, but also to break it down in a way that they learn. So think about like swimming lessons. When was the last time you saw a parent take an infant and just boop, plop them right in the pool? Like, good luck, swim, baby, swim. Right? We would never do that. And you probably think I'm some crazy lady over here now, but it's comical, right? But that's what we're basically doing when we just expect behavior to change tomorrow. It's kind of like throwing the infant into the deep end without the baby steps of all those lessons of swim before that. There's a reason it takes weeks and months and some kids years to learn safety in the water. Think about literacy. Do we just hand our kids a chapter book when they're in preschool and say, read? I expect you to learn how to read. Kids learn how to read. Read. No, and it seems silly to think that. What we do is we break it down into tiny baby steps, right? We start with letter identification. Which one is the, letter X? And then we move on to letter labeling. What letter is this? And the child's like, X. And I'm not a literacy expert, but I know then we move into like the phonetics of it and the sounds the letters make. And then we start blending the letters together and their sounds together. And then eventually we have words and so on and so forth. And that takes years for our children to develop. So doesn't it seem kind of silly now when we have examples like that where we're like, no wonder I'm struggling with this behavior with my child because I'm expecting it like yesterday, but I haven't given them any baby steps in between. So we got to meet them where they're at, right? And we build this bridge between where they're currently at and your expectation, which by the way is completely realistic. It's not that what you're expecting is like too big or that your bar is set too high for your child. Setting the bar high is a great thing as long as you give them the tools to sort of get there, right? So from tonight's webinar, I'm going to talk about some skills you can be working on with your kids and give you examples of the baby steps in the next 5-10 minutes here. And I want you to just pick one that you want to work on for the next week. And just work on that one until it feels good and you're really good at it. And then come back to the slides. We're going to make sure you guys get a copy of those, and then pick another one and go back to that and teach that. And focus on teaching your kids these new skills, because I think that's where we miss out. We think of behavior and we think about, well, we're going to show them that that's wrong because that's how I was raised. Well, we've come a long way in the, I won't tell you how many decades since I was raised. We learned a lot about behavior and how children learn, and we've learned a lot about development and brain neurology and anatomy. And so we can do better. We don't have to teach through fear and consequences and all these things when they're little. Those will be great teaching strategies and very natural as our kids get older. But if right now those aren't working for you, let's instead switch our mindset to what skills are they missing? A lot of parents tell me, my husband and I were raised in 2 different families. His parenting style is very different than my parenting style. So that's never going to change. I can help build that bridge by helping you both focus on the skills your child is missing. It takes the emotion out of it. It takes all the stress of like, I'm not doing a good job as the parent, because that's sometimes I think what's going on. Instead, what we hear is, what skills do I need to teach my child? Their job is to learn. It's just so much more objective, less emotional, because when we're emotional, our switch is going to be dim at best. And so an example is technology and time management with those kids that are learning distance learning. My kids are full distance learning, so of course they're going to learn faster than those of you kids in the hybrid, because they're only having to learn the hybrid expectations for the distance part on fewer days, 3 days I think it is, versus 5 days. And so by the 3rd week, they have, set their timers. They're all set so that it goes off, 5 minutes before the class. They get to their desk, they get logged in. But what I did to teach these expectations was not just tell them. And as a busy parent, I know it's a tendency to want to just do it for them, because you got to get to your conference call, or the water is about to boil over on the stove because lunch is next, whatever it might be. And so think about the teaching of first showing them. So the first day they're sitting at the computer, their hand is on the mouse, and I'm guiding them. And I'm saying, I click here, I then click here, I go here, I go to here. And I'm having them then pause and take notes of those steps, so they have a visual to refer to. Just navigating the technology can be a headache for us as parents, despite, improvements that are made and all these things. And so this is a skill we can definitely teach our kids. My even kindergartner has learned how to get to his assignments, how to get to his, Google Meets. And so I started by showing them. I did it for them. But if we stop there, we're never going to have any less involvement. We go on to them. The next step might be, I'm going to start the process like, okay, so now I've logged you in and now I've gotten you into your classroom in Google. What's your next step? But yesterday I did it all for you, right? So now you're giving a little less help. You get them started, but then you stop and let them finish. And then before you know it, you're like, hey, today, do you think you can just show me, or do you think you need me to do part of it? And usually most kids, especially when they get to be on electronics, even if it's for school, they will tell you, oh no, I want to show you, Mom, I can do this all myself. And that's what my kids say. And so we quickly got to the place where I just showed them. I then got them started, they finished, and now I just watch them and give my feedback once in a while in my dose of attention. Like, wow, you're showing me some awesome responsibility. You got off your, the swing was one of them last week. You came all the way in, got to your desk with 2 minutes to spare, which is something I'm so passionate about teaching my kids, is punctuality. I'm like, oh, I get this blessing to teach them during this time. And so now I just give a dose of attention with my acknowledgement for their responsibility and showing me that they, are good students and all those types of effort feedback that I like to give. So there's an example with transitions, and I feel like I'm close to my time already. What I want to do is just on this slide help you hear me that transitions are a huge piece of why families struggle with distance learning. You have to get them to do 3 things, right? Stop something really fun. Oh man, that's a lot of self-control for a child. And now I have to get them to move away from that fun, which is, even more self-control for a little. And then I have to get them to start that new activity, which is actually less preferred in most cases, or we wouldn't be having this like, you know, refusal or problem or unwanted behavior. So if you think of each of those steps, and I teach you how to use choices in a couple slides here, then what you're going to see is how you can break this down. So my child's into Fortnite, right? A lot of the 5th, 6th, whatever graders are. And so it's like, are you going to finish that battle now, or are you going to turn it off? Finish the battle or turn it off now or finish the battle. What are they going to pick? I want to finish the battle, Mom. Awesome. Well, you know that then I gave that instruction well before that needed to happen. And then while he's finishing that battle, he's shutting down the iPad, whatever he's doing, I'm saying, do you need help to log in, or can you do it yourself? Because now I didn't say, go get on your computer. That's implied, right? That's not the choice. The choice is, how are you going to log on? You going to do it yourself, or you want me to help you? And then getting them to start the next activity is something you could say something like, do you have your notebook and a pencil? Or are you going to use, you know, a colored one today, a colored pencil today, something like that. So giving them choices about what they're going to do with that activity, whatever that activity may be that they're not so excited to do. You're giving them choices. So it's a little bit more control for them as opposed to just, you need to do this now. There's also, I want you to hear me. So you heard me break down transitions into 3 steps, and we use choices at each step of the way to sort of propel them through that transition, to sort of keep their switch on. But then there's several skills they need to make that transition successful. So if just breaking down that transition into 3 steps isn't successful for you, you might need to dig a little deeper, so to speak, and teach these other skills that are missing. And these skills are not just like willy-nilly skills. I picked them out over years of being with families and in classrooms, seeing that these are the pivotal skills children are missing. And I'm talking social emotional behavior regulation skills. And not because there's like a problem with their development, but just because they haven't learned a different expectation yet. So think of it this way. Their current knee-jerk response is just unwanted. They haven't learned a different knee-jerk response yet that's more appropriate. And that's my job as the parent, to teach them that new knee-jerk response to whatever stressor you're currently not enjoying their response to. And so if your child is having a hard time pausing preferred activities, let alone moving away from them, that's a skill we need to teach. And you know what? Teaching it right before that Google Meet at 1 o'clock is not going to be the perfect teaching moment. Are switches on at that time? Probably not. If your child won't make a choice, you know, they won't pick one of the 2 options, you know, all these examples I've been giving, if you've been thinking like, yep, but my child would say neither, or they'd say, well, this 3rd option looks pretty good, Dad, right? Or they just refuse. They want both sometimes. That gets tricky. So making choices is a skill. I look at it as like the first sort of rudimentary form of self-control to help put the boundaries as the parent on our child's behavior, but in a loving and kind way. And so parents tell me all the time, like, yep, I give my kids choices all the time. However, you giving the choice and the child actually picking one without a battle or a negotiation is a whole different conversation. So whether you give choices is one thing, but whether your child actually successfully picks one is key to the success of it. And so that's a skill we need to teach. And that in and of itself may need baby steps. Same with pausing preferred activities. So you can see the baby steps concept. It can be very big layers, right? Transitions need baby steps. There's 3 of those, but then the skills that are missing, there's 4 of those, and each of those skills needs small baby steps. Now, you might be thinking, well, that sounds overwhelming. Did I just flip your switch off? I hope not, because the key is just realizing that throughout the day, during non-school hours, on your weekends, in your evenings, there are times to just slip in these little teaching moments when they ask for things. Those are the perfect teaching moments. So before we close, I can't see any of the comments or anything. I only see my PowerPoint on my screen. So if I need to be wrapping up anytime soon, this is the last part. I think it's the most important, so we'll go with it. So these are the skills I recommend. I don't have time to talk about all of them tonight, so I'm going to talk about the couple that are just pivotal, and they're the ones that we have learned over the years are the first baby steps that if we don't teach these first, the ones after are still going to be pretty stressful. But don't feel overwhelmed, because guess what? Your child's job is to learn. And I have yet to meet a kid who, when we teach in this way, we've got motivation, we break it down into baby steps, and we practice when their switch is on, can't they learn a new response? They sure can. They learn a new knee-jerk response. So I'm going to skip for right now. Actually, I'm going to just quickly talk about the waiting for things, because they have to wait for your attention if they need help with an assignment, or they have to wait for their turn to talk in their Google Meet, or they have to wait while you're, on the phone for work or something like that. So what we usually do is we expect them to just wait for the full 30-minute conference call, or the full 10-minute conversation, with the nanny, or whatever it might be. But they have already shown you they don't have that skill. So we have to break it down into smaller baby steps. And so an example is you tell them, so they ask for something, sure, we can go outside, but before we go outside, we're going to practice what we should do when we have to wait for something, because isn't it a bummer when mom's on the phone and it's hard to wait? I know your little body just has a hard time waiting. So we're going to practice before we go outside. So all you have to do is come on over. You can grab my hand if I'm talking, or you can tap my shoulder once, or you can touch my, leg or hip once. And then I'm going to look at you and I'm going to smile or wink or whatever you choose with your child. Usually I'll let my hand go from theirs and then grab their hand when I'm first teaching. So that's a tactile cue. And I say, while I'm holding your hand, I can't give you my attention. I'm talking on the phone or whatever it is. But as soon as I let go, I'm all yours. And so you ready? We're going to practice. So first, kind of lay down the ground rules and the expectation. From there on, we practice, like role play, like harness your inner theater and actor, because that's how kids learn. If we just keep telling them the rules all day, they're eventually going to get to an age where they can translate that into behavior change. But knowing the rule and being able to recite the rule to you is very different than being able to change their behavior. And so the key is practice when their switch is on. So they walk over, like, okay, let's practice. They walk over, they grab your hand, or they tap your shoulder, whatever you recommend for your kid, and you give them the cue that you heard them, but you're not available, and you keep talking for 3 to 5 seconds, not minutes, seconds, because that's where a lot of kids can tolerate to start as a first baby step. And then you let go of their shoulder or their hand, and you put the phone down, and you might practice this when you don't really need to be on a conversation. Like, there is nobody really on the phone. That's okay. It doesn't matter that it's not perfect real life contingencies. We have 8 years of doing this type of work with history to show that we can teach it when the switch is on, and our kids' brains are really, really smart, that then with practice and muscle memory, they're able to use it and pull from it and access those skills when they get to those stressors and other environments. And so the key is we have to teach it when their switch is on. So then the next time they ask for something, like, sure, I'll get you a snack, but remember that thing we practiced yesterday? We're going to practice that again. Okay, so here's what you do. They come over, they tap your shoulder, you give them the gesture, you keep talking and talking and talking, a little bit longer than last time. Maybe now you can get 15 to 20 seconds maybe. But the key is that you give your attention when they are waiting appropriately. If they're like, mom, 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 and then you're like, I told you I'm not available. Well, now you're too late, bummer, but also they're getting your attention, even though it's not the kind they want. And so now your attention keeps strengthening their unwanted behavior of repeatedly asking and being impatient. So we have to start so small that they can't fail. And then we gradually increase that time that they are waiting for us. And eventually we start giving them something to do, like, oh, you know what? It's going to be a little bit. So do you want to do this or this while you wait for me? And then they'll make a choice and we'll have success. The next one is pausing preferred activities. And this is key. And I'm going to use an iPad as an example because it's like the majority of families that I serve. And so we all have all these devices. And now this, distance learning piece has added a whole mix to that. And so we have to teach them to wait for things first. But then if they're doing that well, now we're going to teach them to pause preferred activities as sort of a baby step to the success of transitioning away from it altogether. So here's how it looked. My client was in kindergarten and I taught this. I'm at their home saying, okay, yep, you can have the iPad while I'm here today, but guess what? We're going to practice pausing it while I'm here. All you have to do is smile at me and hold your hand out, or I'll hold my hand out and put it in my hand and I'll give it right back. Like I won't even let your hand let go of it. I'll actually just give it right back. Are you ready? We're going to practice this. And we're like, yep. So here's the baby steps. I'm going to just play it out for you for time's sake. I need you to pause. And I'm smiling, so they smile. The child smiles, puts it in my hand, and I immediately give it back. Great job. Nice pausing. I'll talk to you in a little bit. You can have some more iPad. The smile is key because if they're smiling, they can't also be protesting or, showing unwanted behavior. And so it's key what behaviors we choose to teach or expected behaviors. So then they play their iPad, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, and then, or look at a video or whatever. And then you smile and you hold your hand out and they put the iPad in and you say, are you going to give me a high five or a hug before I give it back? And they quick give a high five or whatever it is. The key is now the next baby step is they're going to do something short, sweet, fun, like short, like 3 to 5 seconds. And it doesn't require them to get up off the place they're seated. They, aren't going to probably protest because it's fun, and then they get it right back. And then use a choice. And so then they get their iPad back for a little bit. Next time I walk over, I smile. I need you to pause it. They put it in my hand. I'm like, all right, this time, are you going to count to 20 or are you going to sing, Twinkle, Twinkle? I don't know, whatever song. That's going to maybe take 30 to 60 seconds. Happy birthday. And then they choose one, they do it, they get their iPad back. This is the teaching. You're keeping the switch on. And now you've successfully taught them a new knee-jerk response. They smile at you and they hand you the iPad. How many parents watching tonight would, oh, yes, I need that in my home, right? You can teach this. So then the next step, the child's like, I say, I need you to pause it. And he hands me the iPad. I'm like, all right, are you going to go pick up 6 toys or 12 of them? He's like, 6. He runs into the playroom, which is a different room adjacent to the room we're in, picks up 6 toys, puts them away, runs back, gets his iPad. Awesome. So that baby step, what was the key? I got him to get up and move away from that thing, which is hard for kids. But now I've got this calm knee-jerk response. He's ready for it, or she. So then the next step is, all right, this time you will get the iPad back, but we need to practice waiting for it a little longer. So are you going to go have a snack while you wait for it to get back? Or are you going to play a game of Uno with me? Again, you're not teaching this during school hours. The key is to capture these moments during non-school hours. And then the last step is, I need you to pause. Are you going to have some more after class today? Or are you going to wait till tomorrow morning? What do you think they're going to pick? But if you gave that choice now, you'd have a problem, right? Which kind of leads me to my next slide, that most parents tell me when the child will not make a choice, it's usually that they're giving these types of advanced choices. Advanced meaning their switch is off or it's dim, and both of the options are non-preferred. Like they really don't want to do either of them. But they will, because you've taught them when somebody, a safe, trusted adult offers me 2 options, I pick one. And so if your child is, currently refusing to make a choice in the kind of advanced ones I'm describing, like related to non-preferred tasks or when their switch is off, if you're giving a choice then, which I don't recommend, we have to back up. So then we get to intermediate choices. I've been giving lots of examples of these throughout the evening. Here's some more. They're consistently choosing one of 2 options, regardless of the 2 choices. And this is key. Think about the adult version of this. Are you going to speed to work or are you going to do the speed limit? Are you going to attend this webinar and learn new things? Or are you going to endure more distance learning that is not going well, for example? So we have choices all day long. It's just nobody stands in front of us and says, okay, Jamie, your choices today are to eat the healthy food or eat the cake. No, nobody's offering them to me tangibly all day and holding them up in front of me, right? but it's a life skill I've learned to make good choices. I'd like to think I make good choices at least the majority of my day. But our children have to learn that I pick one and I forego the other. And that's the key. That's the self-control. That's why they can't have both, because they need to learn to forego one. So here's an example. Switches on and you tell your child, your choices are to clean up the whole room or just the loose Legos on the floor, which is a common choice at my house. You better believe they're like, just the loose Legos on the floor. And then they get a bowl, like a big old mixing bowl, and they start filling it up, running around, filling up the bowl. And then when they're done that, I'm like, okay, do you think you need a break? Or are you going to move on to all the Magnetiles? So I just keep giving choices for my younger kindergartner till everything's cleaned up. Do you want to use one more color or two before we pause for class? So this would be like if you're coloring. Are you going to do all the assignments that are due today right now? Or are you going to take a break after just one assignment? I highly recommend this choice in this early stages of distance learning. Let them know when the break can be from the get-go as part of the instruction so that you don't have to leave the option open for them to use their unwanted behavior to get the break. This is a good one for my 5th grader. Are you going to read for 25 or 35 minutes? Oops. Are you going to complete the whole math worksheet? Or are you going to take a break when you get to the end of that row right there? You know, whatever row you choose. So use the choices to build that self-control, but also to keep their switch on. Give them a break while their switch is still on so they don't have to learn to use their unwanted behavior. Now, if those types of intermediate choices that I just spoke about are not ones that would work for your child yet, excuse me, then I need you to go to simple choices. Back up to a smaller baby step. This is where you start if you're presenting more of the intermediate or the advanced and it's not going well. Or maybe you've got the child that is like the master negotiator suggesting a third option. You're like, oh, well, yeah, that probably is okay. The key is the switch is on. If they've refused something and then you're like, okay, do you want me to do it or are you going to do it? Right now we've taught them you're going to sweeten the deal when they refuse. And we don't want to do that. For rural moments I just described earlier where they've asked for something, it's their leisure, it's not the real thing like sitting in, you know, distance learning class that isn't going well. Got to pick something where it's going to go well first to keep their switch on. So simple choices for elementary age kids would be things like this. Do you want apples or pears for snack? If they say watermelon, you say apples or pears for snack. If they say both, you say your choices are apples or pears until they pick one. The first couple times you do this, if in the past you've allowed negotiations, they're going to keep persisting. This is the only time I'll tell you to keep repeating your instructions because you have to teach them that you won't get out of these two options. You will pick one of these two options. And again, you'll forego one as well. That's a very important piece of the self-control. An example, your choice is to do the math or the reading assignment first. I do those with my kindergartner. Are you going to watch 1 or 2 shows this morning before school? Well, they're going to pick 2, of course, if I let that be an option, right? But then they feel like they've got that control. It's an important piece to not only give the choices related to the demands or the unpleasant things. We have to give choices related to the fun things too. First, I need you to either do a silly dance or run around the island 3 times. Those are concrete choices. They're very clear cut. They have a clear ending, but they're fun. And the more fun our kids are having, the more they're learning. And especially for the younger kids that are new to learning in the group setting, like our kindergartners, our 1st graders, they need extra fun, as your teachers will know. But as the grades get older and the children get older, we don't necessarily have all the bells and whistles anymore because they don't need it because we've taught the other expectations now. If you need a smaller baby step, use your child's request. So if you have a child that you say apples or pears and you've repeated 3 times and you are just switch off now and you're like, all right, well, clearly I need to find a smaller baby step. This isn't going well. What I need you to do is use the request as one of the options and then toss in a less preferred thing. So it's like, Mom, can we go outside? Sure, we can go outside. You want to go outside or should we go take a nap? What do you think they're going to pick? You better believe they're going to pick go outside because that's just what they asked for. And you better believe most kids are not going to take a nap. And so I think starting there where their first baby step is actually this thing you just asked for, so you're pretty sure they're going to still want it in 2 seconds, or this thing I know you won't want. Because it's really hard to pick when both of them are equally valuable to the child, so we got to make one of them not so valuable to the child. In our first baby step, each baby step for choices, you don't need to stay long, like maybe 3-4 successes across a couple different examples or requests, and you're moving right on to the next step. But then once in a while, still sprinkle in the easy ones and the silly ones and the fun ones, because that's the investment in the strategy. Remember that earlier slide I showed? All right, friends, I know I went way over the time, but this was like hopefully exactly what you were looking for and not anything like you have heard before.
Thank you very much. That was great. A lot of info, and yeah, definitely at this time, I think we all need some of that.
And hopefully you'll pick one thing that is going to be your best tool, and then you'll come back and listen again and find the next one that you find valuable.
Perfect. Thank you. And you have an adult one too? Maybe I should join that one.
I don't know about adult, preschool, high school, middle school.
Close enough.
Okay.
Well, I
Thank you
appreciate
so much for the opportunity to
Does anybody
share.
have any questions? I know we went a little more over time, but does anybody have a question or anything? And we can definitely post your information too, your contact information.
Yep, and I hope it looks like you're recording, so we can share the recording. Yeah. I don't mind if you would like that.
You there?
I did send the slides. And then if any questions come in, you can email me and I can respond via email. Lots of ways to reach me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That is wonderful. All right.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and share the agenda again. I know we're a little off, but just so we can see what's coming up.
Yeah, we'll just keep going on the rest. The next, I think, is the president's report. So at this time, we are just kind of trying to figure out our new normal now with COVID and all the fundraisers coming up that would normally be in the school, and having lots of fun with fall dance and all these things. But we're just going to plan B for now. So as the PTO board, just kind of working those kinks out and looking for people with any ideas as far as different activities we could do safely, and just kind of adjusting in this crazy time that we're all in. We do have a couple of open positions, as we need a vice president on our board, also a treasurer. A shadow is needed. Mike is our wonderful treasurer for now, and this will be his last year, so he will definitely be around to kind of have the shadow and help out. But for next year, 2021, we will be needing a treasurer and also a VP. So just wanted to post that. And speaking other than that, as far as the president's report, that is, I guess that's all we're focusing on for now. And I will hand it over to Mike for the treasurer report.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, like you said, it's actually been a pretty quiet start to the year without the fundraisers and some of the activities that we normally have. So I'll start with the funds available balance, and I'll note that I removed some of the items that we previously approved in the spring that aren't taking place, like the fall dance, the artists in residence, just so we can show a more accurate funding number. So the number I have as of today is $7,481.05. So, and that's removing $9,200 of items that I figure we're not going to end up spending this year, and there'll be more. There'll be other adjustments as the year goes on, just depending how things go. So it's kind of a fluid number right now. And then I guess the only other item as our taxes for the last fiscal year were completed. I picked them up this afternoon. So I hope to get those filed this week. And that's really it, unless there's questions.
Wonderful. And that leads us to Mr. Hartman, the principal report.
All right, well, I'll keep this brief because I know that was a long presentation, but there's some very valuable information for us to digest. And I know that we're all struggling. We all have good days and challenging days. And I just want to thank you, first and foremost, the PTO board, parents that are showing up here tonight, invested, thinking of ways to make this work for their child. And you're sacrificing a lot, and I really appreciate it. This is not ideal. Doesn't matter if you're making distance learning work or you're making hybrid work. It's not what we would want, and I know you know that. I just wanted to acknowledge that first and foremost. That's not what we are wired to provide our families, and so we're doing the best we can. We're open to ideas. We will be throughout the fall here, as information changes, we'll be putting out new updated Anoka County information and kind of adjusting with that. But so far, I've been really impressed from a building principal standpoint of parents partnering with us to work with the operational side of things, because you know that the learning can't take place unless operations are smooth, and then the kids are feeling safe and secure, and the parents are feeling good about sending their kids. And the drop off has been amazing. It's been really, really smooth. I think even if we went back full time, we would want to keep that same process in the front. It's been awesome. Out back, having those designated doors have been really good. There's not kids just walking through the building, which I think it's good to have a designated door and going straight to class, which is beneficial. Having the breakfast right in the classroom, having lunch in the classroom. I know those are things that you do miss out in the cafeteria experience, but you guys know what that experience sounds like too. But it's just peaceful, more or less, to have that conversation between peers within a classroom. And I can tell you, I've only had 2 behavior reports this school year. You think about, I mean, I probably would have gotten, oh God, probably 150 by now, you know, somewhere in that ballpark. So there's something to say for teaching, like as the presenter talked about, teaching our routines, teaching our expectations, slowing down a little bit before you can expect a lot. And I think we had to do that out of safety on the front end. And I think it's paying off dividends. That the kids are really doing a nice job. And I think the staff are connecting with kids. And because that's really what makes us special, I believe. And I didn't know how that was going to go, because with the whole mask thing and how the kids would adjust with the masks. But I've been very impressed with the kids. If anything, it's us adults that sometimes struggle. But the kids actually have been amazing, and kind of floors me that I can see a kindergartner just walking by me with their mask on, not fidgeting with it. It's like, wow, if I was a kindergartner, I would not be doing as well. I probably fidget with mine more than the kindergartners do. So, but I do have my, just for your knowledge, I do supervise my own second grade classroom and for recess and lunch. And I did that purposefully because I know that there's some adjustment that has to take place. And unless I'm doing that job, it's going to be very hard for me to understand it. And so I am doing that. And I think it's been really good for me to understand kind of the operations side of how are kids feeling with receiving their lunch, and being part of the process of cleaning and whatnot. And I think it's going well. And academically, I want to assure you that it looks a lot different. And I know you know that, but when you're looking at our pacing guides, I just reviewed that last Thursday, and we are right on with our reading and our math where we would have been last year, if not maybe a lesson or 2 ahead in math. So even though, because we are emphasizing our reading and math on the 2 days of live instruction, we're doing up to 3.5 to 4 lessons during those 2 days. So I've been really impressed that we're getting through a lot of that, identifying what priority standards, what specific things we need to get through. And that means there are some of those worksheet or some of those things that the kids would have normally worked on in class, that is kind of their thing that they send home. One thing we heard last spring is that we really don't want to tax families and have the access and equity piece become an obstacle in the classroom, and have some families move forward with new content and some students sit neutral. And so we're trying to front load that with the classroom, have everyone experience that new content, and then send home the reinforcement work. If you're a family that needs more of that reinforcement work, one area is Moby Max, and we are going to amp that up. We saw that in the news for Nest Friday night. And Moby continues to refine itself, continues to add more primary work there, letter sounds and letter identification, all the way up to high-end reading literature and nonfiction texts and math. And so that might be a really good area that, if above and beyond what is already provided by the teacher, if you would like that in the News for the Nest, it talks about connecting with Craig Balin. We are going to be doing some more intentional work with that, but if you're eager on that, it's going to help your family stay on a pattern at home, then definitely reach out to them. Lastly, I'd like to just state that we will have our conferences coming up here and in November, and that process will be very similar in the past. We will use You Can Book Me, and it will obviously be a virtual conference. That'll be interesting. There'll be tech issues, I get that, but we want to maintain that checkpoint with the classroom teacher and with families. So you'll be seeing that information coming out middle of October here, and looking forward to moving forward and learning about how to use virtual conferences to our benefit. I think as we move forward, that could be a nice little niche too. Justin is our new photographer. That'll be starting up here early October. Our distance learning families have 2 evenings, and there'll be some information coming out to you guys about signing up for a slot. So I know it's a lot of info. I just want to make sure I kind of end with thank you. You need to email me. You need to reach out to me if you feel like I'm missing a beat. If I'm missing something, I'm doing my darndest. But you know what? I'm human. I'm a parent just like you are, and maybe I missed something. So let me know, and I appreciate partnering with you, and I thank you for your patience this fall.
Thank you, Jason. Did you have anything from Pam on the teacher's report?
No, she knew that this would be more of a dedicated time of strategies, and then so she won't be here tonight.
That works. And there are no funding requests or motions that I have. Jason, did you have any?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. And I just wanted to make sure everybody has a heads up for next month, October 26th. There'll be a town hall format with the superintendent, Brian Dietz. So that'd be a good time to have the superintendent of the school district there to ask any questions that you might have. As Jason said, certainly reach out to him. Mr. Hartman's a wonderful resource that is very prompt in responding and does a great job for all of our kids. But the next meeting will be October 26th with Mr. Brian Dietz. So that'll be a good one too. And that'll be kind of like a town hall format where people can bring up their issues, questions, concerns, and get some more good info on how we're doing with this crazy, crazy time in this crazy school year. And did anybody have any questions at this time for me or anybody else on the board?
If you're interested in any of the open positions, we can stick around for a little bit and just chat if anybody's interested in the vice president or the treasurer's position.
And we're also available. Our information is on the website, is on Facebook. Feel free to make sure, if you haven't already, to like our Facebook page, the Blue Heron PTO. There's a lot of good info that is always posted on there as well. So that's another outlet. So go ahead and join our PTO group on the, or look at the information on Facebook anyway. Join our group, and you can get a lot of good information that way. But feel free to reach out. We have a fun crew, and just looking to make the best of this, and we'll have our kids in a great school year going forward.
Aaron, join us. We are awesome.
Yes,
Yeah,
we are fun.
we definitely have fun, and we are not going to move fast with getting events up and running. We want to make sure that we're not overwhelming families. So just know that if you jump on, we will put you to use in a way that will work for you, and we're not going to put you in a bad spot. So
We all have full-time jobs and work and all that too, and we just everybody just works together and makes it happen. So I think. All right. So
hey, we have one.
Alicia, stick around.
Man, you're a door prize winner. That's big.
I'd give you a big hug if we were in the media center.
A COVID hug. All right.
Yeah, high five, internet high five.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Of course, Jill. You're up.
Woohoo!
All
You
right.
go.
Well, Jill, Sarah, and I can chat with you.
Yeah, we got another one. That's a 3 for that might actually be a record, a PTO record.
Nice. Does it count if
Three
one of them
interested
is my
parties
cousin?
in one meeting. Yes.
Oh, my idea.
No, you're not. We're not talking about that right now.
I'm a park ranger.
My husband's trying to chime in. No, go.
He's gonna join too? Just kidding.
No, yeah. Are you gonna join? Otherwise, leave.
Tell me my idea.
Oh, that's for another day.
It's not. It's money.
Oh, he's funny.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we can, yeah, stick around and chat.
Officially adjourned, 7:48.
And we are officially adjourned. Yes, but we will stay on and chat. But the meeting's officially adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. Have